Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're going to weave together two Texas controversies real quick. All right, stick with me. At TCU, there's a girl who plays basketball, and we're not going to get in, I don't even want to say her name, but let's just say that there's a TCU women's basketball player, and she is under fire for domestic abuse. And it's not just one ex-girlfriend that's come out and said that she's laid hands on her. It's at least three here. There's petitions circulating on change.org, over 80,000 people. If you want to read more into it, there's a great write-up on The Observer detailing the whole story in detail, just a ton of detail. This is such a long story. Now, I don't know if she deserves to get kicked off the basketball team or not. I would lean toward it. I imagine that there are a lot of guys in a similar situation who have gotten in trouble for hitting a girl and they get kicked off the team. There's also probably some guys you let slide, maybe some Michael Vick or, there's plenty of scandalous people that get pushed through just because they're so damn good. But in this one, she's still on the team and she's until further notice. The other scandal, kind of similar, gets treated very different because in this first scandal, when you talk about the article from the Dallas Observer, while they do spell out the bad parts of what she did, there's also there's a tinge of sympathy in there. They're concerned about this player, the TCU women's basketball player, getting death threats. But if you go back about 8 years or so, do you remember the name Art Briles? Football fans know this. Art Briles was a guy who coached up. He did a real good job at Houston, and then when he went to Baylor, he turned a program that was a perennial doormat into a contender. They even had a Heisman Trophy winner, RG3. They were ranked second in the nation for a minute there under Art Briles. Well, Art Briles got in trouble, not because of something Art Briles did, but one of his players was accused, I don't even know if it was ever confirmed, of a sexual assault. Now, the complaint at the time was, and I'm pretty familiar with this story because at the time I was doing a morning show for a station in Waco. The point was being made that, well, if this guy's out here sexually abusing, if this player's out here sexually abusing ladies, and Art Briles hears about it and then continues to play him, well, then he's kind of complicit. That's just an implied okay of this terrible behavior. Art Briles should know better. Art Briles should not be playing anybody who's been accused of something that bad. Art Briles lost his job. He was an up-and-coming coach. He was in the talks to replace the guy, Mac Brown, or whatever, that was at Texas all those years. Remember when they replaced him with, I think it was Herman? Briles was in that conversation until this happened. Briles was on his way to the top of the football world until this happened. Now, Art Briles, it was discovered, I guess last year they finally completed the investigation. I know, just 7 years. What's the hurry, guys? And they found that even though the situation was terrible, Art Briles technically didn't break any rules, any university rules, any NCAA rules, any laws. He actually didn't do anything to the letter of the law or rule wrong. Does he get his job back? Does he get his career back? No, he's still treated like trash. His son's the offensive coordinator for OU. OU took heat because Art Briles came out of the stands after a football game and took a photo with his own son, their offensive coordinator. And there were still complaints. How could you let this guy, how could you let this tainted, controversial guy on the field? This is a bad look for Oklahoma. So let's put these two together. Why does Art Briles get run out of town, have his career destroyed, never to be heard from again? He's not even allowed to set foot on a field without criticism, even one where he's not coaching without criticism. But there's no complaints about the coach at TCU women's basketball. Now, I'm not saying there should be. My point at the time, and still is, that you can't blame the coach for that. If there's a sexual assault, don't go to the guy's football coach. You go to the police. You don't go to the Title IX coordinator on campus. You go to the police. You don't go to some social group. You don't go to some program. You don't go to some college campus counselor. You go to the cops. It's a very serious thing. And it's like you're not taking it serious. It's like, well, oh yeah, you sexually assaulted me? Well, I'm going to tell your football coach. Screw that. Put that dude in jail. That's what I would tell my daughter. Put that dude in jail. I'll call the cops. Leave the football coach alone. He didn't know. It's not like that was in the playbook. Hey, why don't you pull her to a side room at the party and get real handsy with her? I would just like to point out that there was no sympathy for the death threats Art Briles got. No one was concerned about that. No one was concerned about his mental health or his mental well-being. He got crucified as quickly and as hard as possible. And it was shown afterwards the man did nothing wrong. How come this coach isn't being treated the same way? Because she's a woman? Because we are out there actively trying to persecute and paint the picture of female persecution in our society, and the demand for female persecution is far greater than the supply. So we're going to have to make a couple of sacrifices. And Art Briles was just an unlucky guy who got put on the chopping block. Well, that's not cool. That's not justice. Oh, that's right. That's social justice. Right. When your punishment is determined, at least in part, by your sex, you're not being treated the same. You're not being treated equal. You don't have equality. You don't have equal rights. No one concerned. No one concerned. It's a guy getting crapped on, and it's a woman getting the soft treatment. Parker, grow up. We treat men worse in this society than we treat women. Stop being such a bigot. Does that make any sense to you? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. No one's fired this coach yet? Oh, that's weird. Anybody calling for it? If she did, would she be able to get a job at another college? Would she be able to walk on a basketball court and take a picture with a family member without criticism? I doubt it. I just don't want to hear any more about the war on women, people. You don't have enough evidence to support you. I have too many stories like this to go the other way. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I got a good question on the old Facebook feed here. Who was that? That wasn't Brenda, was it? No, that was Dave. Dave asked me, where's that Reagan movie? You were just talking about the Reagan movie. Where can I see that? I think it's going to be in theaters this Friday. You're right. I didn't mention a platform. And we just can't assume that movies are all going to come out in the theaters these days. Maybe it's going to stream on Hulu or Amazon, or I don't know. Decent question. I'm glad I got to pick it up, because if you missed it, then other people will probably thinking the same thing. My next guest, Jim Keyes from Education is Freedom. He's the author of the book Education is Freedom. Let's talk about teachers being burnt out. I saw an article saying teachers are burnt out more than ever, but bro, the school year just started. You can't already be burnt out, can you?
Yeah, I think they've got pretty good reason to be burned out if you think about it. Our teachers have been through a lot from the time of the pandemic and everything they had to go through, but they've been targeted as the most recent pawn, let's say, in the political narrative. They're getting a lot of criticism. Their student engagement levels have been slipping in some cases. Let's face it, their salaries are not great. They're making literally 10% less than they were 10 years ago, adjusted for inflation. So it's a tough job, but it's the most important job that we've got. If you look at military, law enforcement, medical professionals, teachers are right up there in importance, and they're really our first line of defense for the next generation. So it's pretty important to keep them happy.
So how do we do that, Jim?
Starts with individuals. There's a time, I don't know about you, but my vintage is a little bit older, and I go back to the Vietnam era. And we gave a hard time to the veterans coming back during that era. And today, our military is respected and cherished. Well, the same thing we're going through with education. Teachers are the target of a lot of criticism. I think it's time for us as individuals to show a lot of respect and appreciation for our teachers. They've got a really hard and a really important job. So it starts with us. But there's also things that school boards can do and government can do overall to help.
Well, I think as a society, we do a really good job with that. If you put a microphone in front of anybody and be like, do you think teachers are important? You think teachers are good? Do you like teachers? Do you think teachers should be paid more? They're celebrated and we say nice things about them on WBAP on a regular basis. But individually speaking, people can be pretty nasty to teachers. My sister's a teacher. I have two aunts that are teachers. My grandmother was a teacher. So I get to hear a lot of the stories, and it doesn't matter. If you have 25 kids in your class and 24 of them have nice parents, you're going to remember that one set of parents that's not so nice.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. You know what? It's not that dissimilar to a few years ago. We had a few law enforcement issues and the 0.001% of law enforcement that was out there that sort of got themselves in trouble doing some things that people didn't like. And so all of a sudden this outcry came, defund the police. Well, you get a little bit of that in the teaching world as well. You get a couple of teachers that are accused of this or that, and all of a sudden it's, teachers are teaching kids the wrong things, or they're doing this or they're doing that. Bottom line is it's a tiny little minority, and their role is so important to society that we really do have to step back and not look at it with a perception, but really have a better perspective about the importance of teachers. And if you've got a teacher in your family, give them a hug and thank them for all that they do for us.
Yeah, I got a couple of those. Something that teachers have now that we didn't have back in the day is they have Teacher Appreciation Day. And like kids just pile on like a $5 Starbucks gift card onto the teachers. I don't think that's enough to make up for the ornery parents, though.
No, it's not enough. And there are a whole host of things that can be done. Teacher pay is a very important thing. The state of Texas is not always at the top of the scale in terms of what we're paying our teachers. So I think we've got some work to do there. But student engagement as well. It's hard. It's harder than ever before in today's world of technology to keep these kids interested, paying attention, et cetera. But that is solvable with technology. You think about, we've transformed everything from retail to space to media with technology, but we haven't yet transformed the way we teach and learn. So what I'm out there doing is carrying a flag saying, hey, come on, folks, let's use technology to increase engagement so kids are as excited about their class as they are about their video games. It's absolutely possible, but we've got to rally around that.
All right, Jim Keys, where can they find your work outside of WBAP?
Well, I'm actually right here in Dallas, and I am. They can find me, the book, at educationisfreedombook.com. They can find it there and order it, or they can find me at jameswkeys.com is my website. I'd love to hear from anybody, and I hope people have a chance to take a look at the book.
All right, Jim Keys, thanks for being on The James Show.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, coming up next, Dan Bongino, the guy who comes on before me. He spoke in front of a congressional hearing yesterday concerning the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but more specifically, the embarrassing Secret Service failures on July 13th. You'll hear that next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So we have the guy who's on before me, Dan Bongino. He's been doing a killer set of shows ever since July 13th happened because this is totally in his wheelhouse. He's a former Secret Service agent. He's worked on presidential details. He's worked on non-presidential details. He's worked for the CIA. He's worked for the NYPD. He's worked in, law enforcement and security. This is his expertise. He's really only been in broadcasting for, 4 or 5 years? So when this happens, whatever this guy says on it, you might need to stick with it. This is what he said in Congress yesterday.
Listen, let's just get right to the point. This was an apocalyptic security failure. A man was murdered in front of his family. 3 people were shot on live television, including President Trump, and the head who came within 2 millimeters of having his head explode on national television in front of millions of people. There's no sugarcoating it. It's no time for BS. Unfortunately, as Congressman Crane and Mills both indicated, the story seems to have been vanquished to the phantom zone of media coverage. It's amazing how we're still talking about JFK's assassination, but nobody seems to want to talk about President Trump being shot in the head on national television, despite the fact that we have no answers. So I have 5 minutes, so I want to keep it quick, and I want to make 3 points. I worked in the Secret Service for 12 years. I loved it. I worked with some really amazing men and women who gave everything. I mean, a couple of them literally gave everything. I know guys who've gotten bizarre diseases overseas, like chikungunya fever and protection operations. Everybody gave a little bit of something in the Secret Service, and it was a real honor to say I was part of it. But they have 3 institutional problems, I believe, in the macro will help us get to the bottom of how this Secret Service apocalyptic failure won't happen again. First, they have a technology problem. The joke in the Secret Service, which is sadly no longer funny when I was there, and it wasn't funny then either, is they rely on yesterday's technology tomorrow. Think about that. Yesterday's technology, tomorrow. Everything from computer systems that waste agents' times, filling out time and attendance records they were doing, to Congressman Crane and I discussing the fact that they only implemented slings, a technology as old as the wheel, about, 5 or 6 years into my time in the Secret Service, which is embarrassing. The weaponry was old. Everything was old. These are things I would have talked about sooner if they didn't create a security crisis, and I obviously didn't want to air them publicly. Now you're seeing what happens when you don't have a drone up at a site you could have bought for $39.99 on Amazon. Second, another adage in the Secret Service you've heard even the new acting director discuss is the more with less approach. There is no more with less. There's less with less, okay? The Secret Service more with less approach only works if you produce more. That's how capitalism works. You produce a flat screen TV that was probably 20 years ago, $10,000. It's $200 at Walmart now. They produce a better TV with less. That's not what the Secret Service did. They produced less with more. They were given more money and produced less. A 20-year-old criminal outsmarted them on a $40 drone technology piece of device. You're telling me that's more with less? That's disgusting. That's nothing with less. That's less with more. Their budget went up. You guys know you're appropriators. You know that. Third, and I'll wrap it up with this, turn it over to Mr. Prince. The investigative mission, the Secret Service, that they're telling you they need to make them better agents is total crap. That's garbage. Their agents are talented, smart people. They can figure out how to do protection without running out cheap $20 counterfeit notes at 7-Eleven on a Friday night while the president's getting shot in the head. How is it we have a DEA, we have an FBI, we have TIGTA, the IRS, CBP, and 1,000 other entities with a $6 trillion budget, which I know a lot of you guys have been fighting against this grotesque spending. $3 billion goes to the Secret Service, and we're wasting time running out counterfeit notes. It's a serious problem, counterfeiting. Granted, it might be a legacy item. They started doing counterfeiting. That's not what we do now. Get rid of the investigative mission, turn it over to other people, let them do what they do best and should do best. Protection. Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you for doing this. Thanks to the panelists as well and everyone attending. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and so some of that, the reference to running out counterfeit bills is a legacy of the Secret Service, their original charge. Now, you would think the Secret Service, we're an open liberal democracy, lowercase l. We're an open liberal democracy. We don't have secret police. That's what the evil people do in the tyrannical authoritarian states and dictatorships. They have secret police. Hitler has secret police. The Soviet Union, they have secret police. We don't have secret police. Well, the Secret Service started out and still technically is under the Treasury Department. Did you know that? So the Secret Service, their original job, and it still is their job, is to look for counterfeit bills. That's the federal government's job. If the federal government's going to be issuing currency, it makes sense that the federal agency is the one who enforces that. I guess the local cops could do it, but it was tasked with the Secret Service at the beginning of this country's future. Now, this whole idea that they're on the presidential detail, that's an accident. What happened was the first time a president had a security issue, he put the word out, and this wasn't like 2024 where I could text 28 people at the same time and get an instant connection and answer. I couldn't call anyone. You basically just open the window and shout or maybe send messengers in some direction. So whenever there was an issue at the very beginning of this country, the closest building to where the president was staying, I think this might have even been before the White House, if I'm not mistaken, was the Treasury Department. So the closest cops to where the president was living just happened to be the Secret Service. And when I say closest, I mean they were next door. And so that was their job. If there was a security issue or they needed some help, they needed some cops, the president needed a little protecting, it was the Secret Service that did that. And so they just adopted that as part of their full-time mission while maintaining their original charge of looking out for counterfeit bills. Now, they've had this dual mandate ever since then. And now the discussion is finally being had. It's like, well, shouldn't the Secret Service just focus on one thing? Or maybe we should give this job to someone else. Maybe we should have an organization or a squad or some sort of group that is specifically, they only have one job Protect the president. Because that was one of the jokes that was made on July 13th. It's like, damn, Secret Service, you only had one job, and that guy shot the president in the ear. You had one job, and you got thwarted by a 20-year-old, an untrained, with no resources 20-year-old. You had one job. Well, no, that's not true, because they have two jobs. Should they? I don't know. You figured they could do both, but it is weird to know that some of the agents go back and forth. They could be on a detail one day, next week that they're running down some counterfeit $20 bill. I think that's a discussion worth having. And that's one of the many discussions that's not being had right now, because this story is being absolutely memory hold. This is being buried. It's the biggest story of the year so far, and it has disappeared from all news outlets except, of course, like talk radio and Fox News, of course. So updates from that. I'm going to keep an eye on Dan Bongino for that stuff, because he's not letting it go, and rightfully so. That's going to do it for the James Show today. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. Stick around. Coming up next is Mark Levin. But if you need some more James Show action, I'm going to get done here and then go put up the podcast. You can find it at WBAP.com, the WBAP app. But I noticed, I follow you people around. About a third of you listen to it other places where you're already listening to podcasts. That's fine. Just look for the James Show or James Parker. It should pop right up. Thank you very much for hanging out today. I'm James Parker. This has been the James Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You know, sometimes I don't think I'm a real journalist, and I'm not. I'm just a talk show host. I'm a clown. I'm here for entertainment purposes. But then I go look at the supposed real journalists, and these are back-to-back headlines that just popped up on my computer screen right before this segment started. Number one was, Hillary Clinton explains why Kamala Harris is the underdog in the race. And then from Yahoo News, these are the keys to whether Harris can maintain her lead over Trump. These are back-to-back. Y'all don't even check with your coworker? Can you just ask like the dude over in the cubicle wall? Hey, what are you writing? So we don't write the opposite things adjacent to each other. Good Lord, it really is that bad. My next guest coming in from the Heritage Foundation, Daniel Cochran's on the show. And Daniel, there is a new Ronald Reagan movie starring Dennis Quaid that's supposed to come out at the end of the week, and it's being throttled on Facebook. What is the deal with that?
Well, I think that the big lesson is that not even Ronald Reagan gets a pass from big tech censorship. You know, Dennis Quaid in a recent interview said that Facebook had been censoring ads promoting the film in advance of its release. And what's really interesting is this comes out days before Mark Zuckerberg responded to the U.S. Congress and said, in fact, during 2020 and 2021, the government was pressuring Facebook to censor both the Hunter Biden laptop story and various speech around COVID-19. So Facebook has an interesting pattern a concerning pattern of censoring American speech and then apologizing later, which is, I think, what your listeners really need to take away from this. It's not enough for big tech CEOs to come crying years after they've done damage, saying we should have done better, but we didn't, and now expect that everything's going to go away. We really need, I think, permanent long-standing accountability for these CEOs and their companies to change things.
But have they actually admitted that they're throttling the ads for the Reagan movie? And have they admitted that it's due to concerns it will influence the election?
So so specifically on the ads, what Facebook has said publicly is that the ads were flagged by an automated system that was designed to detect certain kinds of political content. And essentially, this is how these companies use artificial intelligence. They have these AI algorithms that look for keywords, patterns of speech, etc., and they'll flag them. And basically, they automatically restrict their distribution on the platform unless the company pre-approves the ads or gives it essentially a clearance. And in this case, that appears to be what happened. But what's really interesting is that the same thing happened recently after former former President Trump was the attempted assassination on former President Trump, where the company, the same sort of, I think one of the similar automated systems flagged a photo of President Trump shortly after he was shot at, and they basically claimed the sort of the same excuse. It's like, well, our automated system flagged this content. You know, it was controversial. We weren't, you know, it might have been fake, or it might have been on a topic that we need to pre-approve, and until we pre-approve it, it gets restricted. So it's essentially censorship by default, and AI makes this so much easier. And that's the problem, is we don't really know how these companies are defining things like political or controversial topics, and we don't know what goes on behind the scenes and how they're making these decisions.
Well,
so they're entirely at their mercy.
Right, and it would be easy for them to prove that this isn't a politically motivated, necessarily unfair censorship. This is just what they do to everybody. What lefty movies have they censored like this?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not aware of any at the top of my head.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's none. I'll save you the research. It's none.
Absolutely.
Look, not to be too sympathetic to Mark Zuckerberg, but there is a piece of sympathy I gained for him this week when they arrested the dude that runs Telegram, the guy that started Telegram. And there's been a lot of governments and tyrants that don't like Telegram because it's end-to-end encryption, which means the CIA, the FBI, they can't read what I'm sending to you via Telegram. And, you know, Facebook plays ball. They built in backdoors, and they let the CIA and FBI just go watch all our stuff if they want. Same thing with, you know, Snapchat. And of course, Instagram is still Facebook, but all these other platforms like a Jeff Bezos platform, Twitch and stuff, they all build in backdoors. Telegram didn't. Now he got arrested because he didn't play ball. I see why Mark Zuckerberg did play ball. This is better than being in jail.
Well, absolutely. And I think what's critical to note is that Telegram is one of really only 3 major apps. I mean, there are probably a couple others much smaller, but one of only 3 major apps that have end-to-end encryption. And so that's WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta. And that's Telegram, and then Signal. And so what's really interesting is that ahead of a major election here in the U.S., we know that X, which is now controlled by Elon Musk, is under a vigorous assault from the EU and the UK. And at the same time, they arrest the CEO of Telegram, which is one of the other sort of alternative, kind of networking social media apps, and one of the few that hasn't given in to government pressure to give them a backdoor. In fact, the founder of Telegram said to Tucker Carlson back in April that the FBI was trying to hire his engineers and sort of on the down low to give them backdoor access, and he found out about it. They refused to do it, and so it's just interesting timing. As we approach a major election, all of a sudden there's all these attacks on independent platforms that aren't playing ball with the deep state, and that should concern every American, frankly, everyone who cares about free speech.
Well, listen, if you're a Democrat, you got to love it. The CIA, the FBI, they're breaking laws and violating rights and surveying all this to help thwart Trump. I mean, look, when they signed the letter saying the Hunter laptop was disinformation, that was all CIA and FBI and intelligence veterans. And it seems like if there is a deep state, if there is an Illuminati or a cabal or an evil elite that's puppet mastering over the rest of us, they're clearly on Team Blue, Daniel.
Well, I think it's clear that there was a lot of foul play around the Hunter Biden laptop story and censoring that ahead of the 2020 election. I mean, the fact is the FBI knew it was real, and as they knew it was real, they were going to Twitter, now X, and Facebook and saying, "Hey, this story might be coming out, and if it does, know that it's foreign disinformation." The companies took the bait, and I think the reality is, while Mark Zuckerberg years later is now saying, "Yeah, you're right, they pressured us," I think it's too little, too late. Right. The reality is these companies have huge power over what we see and say online.
Daniel Cochran, Heritage Foundation. I think the solution is we need to watch this movie and watch it even harder than we would have anyway. Thank you very much for your time on the James Show, Daniel. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Just watch it. Maybe watch it twice. Maybe watch it like 4 times. Every walker who joins the American Heart Association Heart Walk, every dollar donated means more people trained in life-saving CPR, more research, more life-saving moments for everyone. Walk to save lives. Register at DallasHeartWalk.org or TarrantCountyHeartWalk.org. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.